Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you find yourself today. Thanks so much for joining us for today's webinar, New Technology to Keep Kids Safe in School Zones. We know this is a popular topic, and we are so excited to welcome you to today's webinar. We are going to give folks a minute to sign in and join. So while folks are joining, go on ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. We'd love to hear your name, where you are joining us from. And we're really curious about today's topic really focuses on innovation and trying new things. So we'd love to hear from you. Are you trying anything new with your Safe Routes to School work this spring or this semester? Drop us a note in the chat as we welcome people logging in to the webinar. Okay, it says attendee chat is disabled. Jillian, can you fix that?
Yes, that is so bizarre. Not seeing
All right,
that.
well, while we work on fixing that, I'll start by welcoming everyone again to the webinar. Today, we are talking about new technology to keep kids safe in school zones. And we at Safe Routes Partnership are so happy to welcome you to the webinar and today's topic. Our organization's mission is to advance safe walking and rolling to and from schools and in everyday life. So a couple of reminders about today's webinar. The webinar is being recorded. We will share links to resources in the slide deck. We always post the recordings and the slides after the webinar. We know that is always a top question, so rest assured we will share the recording and the slides. And we ask that folks ask their questions in the Q&A box rather than the chat. It seems like maybe we're having a chat box issue. So please put questions and answers into the Q&A. That way it's easier for us to keep track of them at the end. And also just want to share, as always at Safe Routes Partnership, we are here to help. Linked here are Learning Center workshops and training catalogs, and let everyone know that we have customizable workshops, trainings, and presentations provided by our team, and some information on how you can learn more about this. Here are some of the topics that we cover in workshops, training, and technical assistance. Of course, we talk about safe routes to school, active transportation planning, policies, and programming, as well as state network support, community engagement, and design your own. So let's see, is the chat back up and working? All right, it is working. So I'm going to go back to our intro slide. So we're asking everyone to take a moment to introduce themselves. What's your name? What is your location? And are you trying anything new with your Safe Routes to School program or your work this spring or this semester? Today on this webinar, we are so excited to be joined by two innovators and leaders in this field. And so we want to hear what is new, exciting, and innovative where you live. And with that, we will go ahead and get started and kick off into our topic, new technology to keep kids safe in school zones. So if you are here, I'm sorry, my slides are having a little bit of a slow moment advancing. Jillian, I might need you to share my slides. We'll try to give it one more minute here.
No problem. Just let me know.
Okay. Thanks for your patience, folks. Okay, so as we ground our conversation today, I want to start by reminding everyone that Safe Routes to School works. Safe Routes to School programs lead to a 35 to 45% increase in walking and biking to school, and they result in a 45 to 75% decrease in pedestrian injuries near school. How do we know this? We know this because one of the 6 E's of Safe Routes to School is evaluation. We are constantly trying to assess what approaches are working, what is more or less successful, and how can we tailor our strategies to really accomplish the goals that we are focused on. So with evaluation within Safe Routes to School, we want to understand what's working, what's not working, and we want to double down on what works and pivot when a strategy is not working. It's also an opportunity for us as a field to take in new information and look at research and implications for the field and then change our work accordingly. And so that's the lens that we bring to today's work when we're evaluating automated enforcement and modern data tools for roadway safety. I'm old enough to remember going to see this movie AI in the movie theaters back when it came out and thinking about how far forward we have come, and so exciting to be able to think about how we are applying these technologies in service of our shared goals of keeping kids and community members safe on our roadways, which we know is one of the impediments to parents and caregivers allowing their kids to walk and bike to school. So at the partnership, when we think about evaluating automated enforcement and modern data tools for roadway safety, here are some of the questions that we ask. We ask, does it work to reduce traffic injuries and fatalities? Does it reduce racial bias in enforcement? We want to know if it has a long-term impact. Can it shift toward preventing crashes rather than solely punishing offenders? And are privacy concerns meaningfully addressed? So I'm going to go through a number of examples of modern data tools and automated enforcement in Safe Routes to School and roadway safety from across the country before passing it over to our colleagues, Dhruv, the founder of Obvio, and Pete, the executive director of Bicycle Colorado, who are going to highlight innovations in roadway safety technology and applications in the practical sense. So I want to highlight an example from Seattle, Washington, where red light and school zone speed cameras directly support the city's Safe Routes to School program. And combined with other funding mechanisms, Seattle's Safe Routes to School program has the incredibly impressive accolade that they have made infrastructure improvements at every public school in the city. And they have a 5-year action plan guiding their programs. They're really able to reinvest the dollars from the red light and school zone speed in service of supporting more kids to walk and bike to school and improving roadway safety. More broadly, when we look at the research and apply our framework of questions on automated speed enforcement, it's really clear that speed kills and roadways are not presently designed to keep kids safe. The research that is coming out on automated speed enforcement shows that it is effective at reducing speeds and the impacts are long lasting. So we are seeing sustained speed reduction over years, not solely short-term changes. And we're also seeing that revenue investment matters. We'll talk a little bit more about that. So examples of automated speed enforcement in action. So I live in the great city of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where automated speed enforcement began on Roosevelt Boulevard, which was the most dangerous corridor in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It began in August 2020. And so to date, it has reduced speeding by 95% at camera locations. It has reduced fatal and injury crashes by more than 20%. And economic research from the University of Pennsylvania has estimated that the speed cameras have saved almost 1 life per month on Roosevelt Boulevard. In New York City, the city expanded the use of speed safety cameras to more than 700 school zones back in July 2019. And we're seeing the number of speeding tickets decline by 75% 2 years after deploying those speed cameras, which signals that this is a long-term change strategy. It's not just recurring offenses over and over again. We are always asked about rural examples in everything we do. So I wanted to make sure I included a rural example. And this is different technology, but this is in the Acadiana Planning Commission in southern Louisiana, where they used predictive analytics to identify high-risk locations on rural roads. And then they installed targeted countermeasures to prevent crashes at T intersections where they were seeing a high rate of people going off the road and incurring serious and fatal crashes. By using these predictive analytics to guide their infrastructure installations, they saw a decline in crashes by 50% at every treated intersection, with some sites, most sites actually, eliminating this type of crash altogether. So really seeing that shift to prevention. And then I wanted to highlight an example that's not just about infrastructure or speeding. So this is one that's about distracted driving. And so mobile telematics data can reveal patterns related to non-infrastructure opportunities as well. So this is an example using mobile phone sensor data that showed on the first day of school in Denver, Colorado, at this particular elementary school, there was an 87% increase in distracted driving near an elementary school on the first day of school. So what this does is it provides an opportunity to really target the messages and non-infrastructure programming to address that specific concern that is risky driver behavior imperiling students and community members. Those of you who know me know that one of my roles at the Safe Routes Partnership is as our lobbyist in Washington, D.C. And so this is something that is being advocated for in federal policy as part of surface transportation reauthorization as well. There are so many exciting new tools, modern data tools and technologies, and there's bipartisan, bicameral legislation in Congress that modernizes federal policy to allow states to spend federal dollars on these types of technologies. So really wanting to shift toward embracing the use of these modern tools and technology that not only keep kids safe in school zones, but keep all road users safe as they move around their communities. So I wanted to share a couple of key takeaways from our assessment of these modern tools and technologies, which is that these data tools can quantify roadway safety challenges and identify problematic intersections and corridors. And they can be used to evaluate both infrastructure and non-infrastructure strategies quickly. So currently, we often have, we implement a strategy and then we have to wait for crash data to tell us if it worked or not. Many of these tools and technologies, including some of the technology you'll hear about from our colleagues today, you can get data much more quickly and we can understand where the problems are and if something that we tried to mitigate that concern is working or not. So I alluded to this earlier. So revenue reinvestment really matters. And that is one of the ways that we build trust. And so we saw that in the Seattle example where the revenue is reinvested in the Safe Routes to School program. So ensuring that the public doesn't feel like this is just a cash grab from the city, that it's not just going into the general fund, but that after offsetting costs of deploying the technology, it's being reinvested in prevention. And this is similar in the city of Philadelphia. Our red light enforcement funds are reinvested in community identified traffic roadway safety interventions. And that is something that as we scan the literature and connect with stakeholders, that is something that we hear over and over again. We are seeing that automated enforcement is effective at reducing roadway fatalities and deterring unsafe roadway behavior. And we're really excited to see that communities are beginning to adopt new technology to improve roadway safety. As with all Safe Routes to School strategies, we are committed to ongoing evaluation. We always want to hear how things are working, where pain points are, so that we can work through making sure that we are investing resources where they are most effective. And I just want to make a quick pitch for the Safe Routes Partnership National Conference. Call for proposals is open. Submit by April 1st. Here's a link to where you can submit. And as always, here's how you can stay connected with us. And with that, I am so excited to pass it over to my colleague Dhruv, who is the founder of Obvio and will be sharing about their technology that works to keep kids safe in school zones.
Great. Can everyone hear me okay? Maybe a thumbs up. Yes. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Marisa, for that introduction and that background on automated traffic enforcement. And thanks so much for the Safe Routes Partnership for giving us the opportunity to share our technology. It's something that we're incredibly passionate about, and it's really encouraging to see just how many people are here interested in learning more as well. So let me just quickly share my screen and I'll submit, see if it's working. Can everyone see my screen? I think I see a yes.
Yep, we
Great.
can see it.
Awesome. So our company is called Obvio, and the program is called Let's Drive Safer. And our background as a company, I'll just kind of go through a little bit of Obvio, our background, how the technology works, and talk a little bit about the impact that we've seen through these kinds of technologies. My background is that I actually came from another company where we were building dash cameras for truck drivers, and we had built this small camera, and we leveraged computer vision and AI to be able to detect when the driver was speeding, skipping stop signs, swerving, and we would give real-time alerts to those drivers to help them with better driving. And we realized through this process there was a 25% reduction in crashes across the trucking industry for anyone who's using this camera. And that sort of planted a seed in our minds, which was this kind of technology can really make a difference. And what if we brought it to the world of public safety beyond just the trucking industry? And that's sort of how Obvio was born. And just a little bit of background, and we'll talk a little bit more about the technology, but we actually helped pioneer one of the first pieces of legislation in the country focused on stop sign automated ticketing. We were able to expand this greatly and start seeing the impact, and we'll go in a little bit more detail. But thanks to some of the results that we saw in Maryland, there's been a lot of interest in stop sign and crosswalk monitoring, in addition to speed and red light across a lot of different states. And so we're really seeing this starting to grow. I'm excited to talk to you all about it today. Um, with automated traffic enforcement, a lot of people have some of the concerns that Marisa had brought up, which is, are these revenue grabs? Are these gotcha programs? And one of the things that we've really focused on is building a new kind of system that's very, very community focused. And so I'll talk a little bit about the technology first, and then I'll spend some time talking about how we've built community programs, built community buy-in. Just from a technology standpoint, it's a solar powered device. There's a camera that can see sort of like the whole scene, as well as a camera that can grab license plates. And it's customizable by design. In most of the communities that we've put these up, we've decorated them in the brand of the community itself, town colors. And the goal is to make this hyper visible, not sort of gotcha in any way, but we put this up and we also put up a lot of signage saying, this is an enforcement zone, this is a school zone, this is a place that you want to really be driving safe. And then on the device itself, there's essentially an AI computer that's processing the footage on the device. And so the only thing that's ever uploaded or leaves the device is the actual violation, and that goes to law enforcement for their approval. And the rest of the footage is deleted within a few hours, sometimes 12 hours, sometimes 24 hours. And so the goal here is how do we build something that's also very private by design? Now, just to give you a little bit of a visual of what the camera is actually able to see and detect.
Dhruv, sorry
Hey,
to
Dhruv.
interrupt you.
Yeah.
We're not seeing your slides advance. We're just seeing on your main slide.
Oh, okay. Let me try one more time. How about now?
Perfect. Thanks.
Okay, so hopefully, did people see this visual? So this is sort of a visual of the what I'm showing right now is a visual of the camera device itself. As you can see, it's colorful, it's solar powered, it's compact, and the goal is to be able to make this very brightly colored and visible. And um, this is an example. This next slide, and hopefully I get flagged if people can't see it. Is an example of what our camera is able to see. And so it's be able to detect bounding boxes of different objects in the scene. And so we can track when people are making um, full and complete stops, which direction they're going. And again, this is all local to the camera itself. It doesn't actually leave the device. So that we can start making determinations of, what is driver behavior looking like? And so this allows us to detect things like speed and stop sign running from the same exact device. This is an example where we see someone blowing through the crosswalk when someone's just trying to walk across, and we're able to blur the pedestrian itself on the device, so you protect privacy while still detecting these unsafe behaviors. Um, and then you have other examples where we can actually start detecting driver distraction, where again it's keeping the identity obfuscated while actually seeing the behavior on the roadways. Now, one of the key things that we do is we really focus on community engagement and support. And so the goal here is basically before we even deploy any of these programs, we put out lawn signs, we count the number of violations that are happening and showcase with the community, this is what's happening on your roadways today. And we have these transparency portals that we can detect and share the numbers of, you have this many people skipping a stop sign or this many people speeding, and the goal is to really start with an education approach because we know, most people don't actually want to be bad drivers. It's just they don't realize how bad the problem is. And as Marisa said, one of the most important parts of these programs is once you actually have the behavior change and the ticketing programs live, one, highlighting just how much driver behavior has changed. And so some of our programs really focus on that measurement. But then two, leveraging the revenue to reinvest into the communities and some of the legislation that we've partnered on, and we've really focused on having that in there. And so that sort of gives a little bit more comfort to citizens that it's not just a revenue grab, it is money being used to make the community better. And so just thought I'd walk through a little bit of what happened in Maryland when we started building this technology. Like many other communities across the country, Maryland was facing a lot of citizen complaints. Officers were stretched thin; they didn't have time to be everywhere at once, and there were a series of high-profile tragic accidents. And right as we were sort of building our stop sign camera technology, we had gotten in touch with folks in Maryland, and we were able to measure, just how many violations were happening across different intersections. And what we realized was shocking. Close to 27,000 violations per day across just a few municipalities, and these were just measuring 3 or 4 high traffic intersections per municipality. So the numbers were shocking, and since then we've gone to a lot of different communities, including Pennsylvania and Virginia and Colorado, and we'll share that data in a bit. But once we showed this data to folks in the community, Maryland actually moved forward to pass new legislation to enable automated traffic enforcement for stop sign running. And it happened quickly. Just within a few months, the law went into effect, and there were close to 12 municipalities that moved forward with these programs. Now, what was interesting is, we deployed these programs, and we wanted to sort of see how we could build something that, was cost neutral for municipalities, fully violator funded program, and we wanted to start measuring the driver behavior. And what we saw there was a 65% reduction in violations within 4 months of the program going live. And then on top of the entire program being violator funded, there's an additional $1.6 million that were generated that could be used for public safety and pedestrian safety. And so I think this actually was a really motivating sign for a lot of municipalities as well as legislators to see that, hey, this stuff really works. And it's not just about speed and red light that is more commonly known, but you can use the same kind of technology to change driver behavior in things like stop sign running and crosswalk monitoring as well. And what we've really focused on as a starting point is looking at school zones. I think there's a lot of places across the country that are really struggling to find crossing guards, to find police officers that can wait around in different places. And by having this sort of technology, you essentially end up with a virtual crossing guard that is helping keep people safe 24/7, both in cold winter months as well as hot, humid summer months when officers may not be able to get out there. Um, one thing that we've also worked on is doing traffic studies. I think one of the biggest challenges in this space is people have speed radars. Once in a while, they do traffic studies, but we built a really portable device that can be used to gather data in a lot of different parts of town. And so, for communities that are trying to make a decision on, whether we should move forward with these kinds of programs, our recommendation is always let the data guide you. Don't wait for a crash to happen. Don't wait for a fatality to happen. Start by collecting data, see if your community can leverage that data, both in terms of internal decision making, and then this may be able to guide you towards whether you want something like automated traffic enforcement or just a different kind of solution for your community. And finally, what I'll add is, this is a movement that's certainly growing. We're really grateful for being able to partner with Safe Routes, but so far we've been focused on Colorado and Maryland, but there is legislation being discussed across all of these other states that are highlighted here. And we're certainly interested in bringing the technology to other places as well. Now, for places that have already authorized speed and red light cameras, we're happy to bring the Let's Drive Safer program over. And for other places where the problem is more around stop sign running or not yielding to pedestrians, we're happy to work with you and talk to you about how we could bring this to your state, which may require some legislative action as well. And so, I'll pause here. Really grateful for the opportunity to share a little bit about what we've been doing in this corner of the world. And if it's something that's interest of you, you're welcome to email me. You can email me at dhruv@obvio.ai. Or I'm sure, the Safe Routes folks can pass along my contact information as well. And so I think I'm not sure, Marisa, if it's a good idea to take questions now or pass
We'll
along
pass it
to
to
Pete.
Pete. Yeah, thanks so much, Dhruv. That was great. And we've got lots of questions. We'll do questions at the end, but I'll pass it to Pete now to talk about application of this work in Colorado. So Pete is the executive director of Bicycle Colorado, and we'll take it away from here.
Thanks, Marisa, and thanks for the opportunity to talk with you all. My name is Pete Piccolo with Bicycle Colorado. We are a state level advocacy nonprofit focusing on bike ped safety. And we spend quite a bit of time on public policy. We also have an education program that ranges from teaching kiddos to learn to ride to people to drive safely around vulnerable road users. So we have our hands on a lot of different things. And so let me just tell you a little bit about Colorado and how we came to this traffic study, and then I'll share with you the data. So what's interesting is when we talk with people about traffic safety in Colorado, but especially in other states, they're surprised to learn that we're average. So if you were to look at traffic fatalities per capita, Colorado is in the middle of the bell curve. And yeah, I think people are surprised because Colorado conjures images of, outdoor lifestyle, healthy lifestyle, which is, it's all true. And it is a wonderful place to bike, hike, ride a bike, whether it's for recreation or for everyday trips. Yet we also have serious traffic safety issues. On any given day in Colorado, if history is any indication of the future, today we can expect 2 people to die traveling from their point A to point B in Colorado and 8 to be seriously injured. Bike ped fatalities are up 89% over the past 10 years in Colorado. Total fatalities over the past 10 years were 3,530, 17,000 people seriously injured. So we have a problem. And more and more policymakers and folks in the community we talk to are starting to get a gist of this. They're starting to understand that we have a problem. Yet at the same time, I cannot tell you how many times we are in conversations with government officials and we're proposing some type of safety solution. And we hear, basically, we think this solution is in search of a problem. Like the vast majority of people in Colorado are really good drivers. Now, of course, that doesn't comport with the data that I just shared with you, but nevertheless, folks are like, people are good drivers, which just asked us to raise the question. I mean, is that really true? How can we now take a look at driver behavior? And we were fortunate to find Obvio, and we conceived of this traffic safety study. So we believe it's the largest driver behavior study of its kind. Certainly, it is in Colorado. We visited 26 communities in the state. We observed 196 intersections for 30 minutes each. And I just want to be clear with you all that we went to intersections where there was something to observe. Like there was some traffic volume, places where there were pedestrians and bicyclists, but we did not target high injury corridors. And so it's a fairly broad sample of 196 intersections. We observed almost 50,000 vehicles in those 196 intersections. And in observing those 49,000 plus vehicles, there were also 1,700 bicyclists present, 6,000 pedestrians, and we recorded 7,900 traffic violations across a couple of different violations. So not obeying red lights, not obeying stop or yield signs, speeding, distracted driving, and seatbelts. So again, this is 30-minute windows, 196 intersections. And if we were to extrapolate that into a full day, that implies 200 violations in a single day just in these 196 intersections. And so the theory we held going into this study was that, people are not great drivers. And this data supported that. So let me drill into those 7,900 violations. So first, red light violations. There were 598 red light violations. That's a 1.7% infraction rate. There were 2,525 speeding violations, 18% violation rate. There were 1,213 stop sign violations, and that's a 44.5% violation rate. 395 yield sign violations, a 2.1% violation rate, and then a 2.8% distracted driving rate, and 7.7% of the drivers were not wearing a seatbelt. And it is the law in Colorado to wear a seatbelt. It's also law now to not use an electronic device when driving. So I'm not going to drill into each of these 5 categories, but I do want to hit on stop sign and yield and distracted driving, in part because they're newer. I find that when we're talking about automated enforcement, we're often talking about red light violations and speeding violations, which is understandable. But stop sign and yields is fairly new, as is distracted driving in terms of automated enforcement. So when we share this data, the reaction to stop signs is interesting. So clearly the violation rate is high, and the questions we're asked are good questions. Like, not all violations are equal, and that's a fair point. Like, how fast were they proceeding through the stop sign? Were they turning right, left, or going straight? I think that's all fair, but the general conversation, a theme that has surfaced in these conversations around the stop sign violation is, everyone does it, and is it really that bad? Um, and we're settling under the conclusion that it is bad. It is bad. And not just because of the data that's reflected in the lower left corner of this slide. 40% of fatal intersection crashes occur at intersections controlled by stop signs, or that in 2024, 401 crashes at stop signs that were investigated by our state patrol, 81% resulted in injury and fatality. But there does seem to be this loose adherence to the law. And it really has us asking questions about how that then manifests in other driving behaviors across our community. And what we've also observed across these various violations, that there's quite a bit of variability from location to location. And so here you see in the upper right, like in Denver on Raleigh and 17th, it was an 85% violation rate. Where in Commerce City, a 56% violation rate. So we do think that this is problematic, a 44.5% violation rate for stop signs. So it's a similar message on yield. I don't know if you can see this video. Just in the spirit of time, I'm not going to blow it up. It's similar to the video that Dhruv showed you earlier of a pedestrian. In that one, it was flashing beacons, crossing a crosswalk, and the driver just continuing forward. And similar to stop signs, we've been asked, like, is this really a problem? That what you just saw in that video, is that really a problem? And again, we do think it is. And again, similar to the other violations, quite a bit of variability, 2.1 average, but as high as 33%, for example, in Federal Heights and 90th. And then distracted driving. So keep in mind, we're at intersections, and I think it's reasonable to assume that when you're passing through an intersection, it's probably when you're most alert. And I would hope, like, least likely to be manipulating your phone, as opposed to, let's say, maybe a long straightaway. We did a survey a few years ago in Colorado, and the respondent said that 77% of the respondents admitted to using their phones while driving. So I do think this 2.8% is low. And I don't have to preach to you about the dangers of distracted driving. There's so much evidence out there that makes the point that, how dangerous it is, and compares it to driving under the influence. And I'll just say, when I talk to people about distracted driving, and to break it down for them, it checks 3 boxes. It's a physical distraction. You're holding something, your hands off the wheel. It's a visual distraction. Your eyes are not on the road, not a screen. And it's a cognitive distraction as well, which is why it's so dangerous. We are still thinking through, how does automated enforcement come into play addressing our distracted driving problem. I think it's easy to say, well, if you have an image like you see on the screen, you can ticket the driver. We're not there yet in Colorado, but it's a conversation that we're having. So where do we go from here? How do we address this public health epidemic that is traffic violence? And as Marisa mentioned earlier, there are different tools in our tool belt. As advocates or at Bicycle Colorado, we do spend a lot of time on the physical infrastructure, securing public funding for infrastructure that prioritizes safety, passing policies and laws that support safe infrastructure. In Colorado, we have a state budget crisis. We basically are broke. We don't have money to spend. If you've ever driven on Colorado roads, you would probably notice that. And so engineering is really challenging for us. We do, as I mentioned, engage in education. We will continue to do it. It's hard to measure. To be honest with you, there are times where I just question its efficacy. But we nevertheless invest time in this. And then it brings us to enforcement. And, um, as mentioned earlier, the research tells us that consistent enforcement with timely and meaningful consequences changes behavior. And in Colorado, since 2020, enforcement of traffic laws is down. There's a recent study that concluded that tickets for traffic violations are down 58% over the last 4 years, and there's a number of reasons contributing to that. But we look at automated enforcement as a highly effective tool to enforce traffic laws. So I want to wrap up by just talking about the legal framework we have and some of the advocacy that we do. So it is important to have a quality legal framework in place. In Colorado, 3 laws have been passed over the last 3 years, so 23, 4, and 5. And we have a bill this year, so potentially 4 years in a row passing legislation. And I think it's a good policy framework. Of course, it's not perfect. Some of the what's included in this year's bill is to clean up past bills. But what we do have in Colorado is that city councils, local city councils, have to approve the use of automated enforcement if it is outside of a school zone, construction zone, adjacent to a park, or on a residential street. So city council will designate what we call an automated enforcement zone. And again, that's necessary before law enforcement can install cameras. We crafted our legal framework to ensure that the technology can be used not just for speeding and traffic signals, but traffic signs like yield signs, stop signs, flashing beacons for pedestrian crossings. We also included in our statute using the technology to enforce unlawful use of bus and bike lanes. And then the last year's bill, we expanded the statute to include using the technology to enforce unlawfully passing a stopped school bus. And so we've just picked up that advocacy this year, and it's been well received thus far by a number of school districts. I'm hopeful that we'll have this technology in place by the start of next school year in a number of our larger districts. And it was a surprise to me as a footnote that is a big problem, people illegally passing school buses. The statute includes public notifications and warnings. I inserted the word generous. I do think it's quite generous where, there's public notices before cameras are installed. There is a 30-day warning period. There's signs before corridors. There's signs before signals. It makes me think that you must be distracted if you don't see all the notices and you end up getting a ticket. But there's quite a bit of public communication. And then data privacy is important, of course. So we have rigorous data privacy protections. And then lastly, I mentioned the bill that we're working on now. There are actually 2 bills. And what's really interesting is the school zone bill. And, so what the school bill in Colorado, school districts and municipalities can set the school zone size. So there's no guidelines. This establishes a minimum school zone of 1,000 feet around the school boundary. So again, school zones, municipalities can install cameras without city council approval. And then we're also creating what we're calling legally designated safe routes to schools. It's up to the municipality to define what that is. But those safe routes to schools then are also open to automated traffic enforcement without school zone approval. We covered the impact of automated enforcement. Our research has led us to the same conclusion you just heard. It works. We have some data now in Colorado where it is being installed, where it's highly, highly effective. So I want to wrap up with a few comments on just advocacy. And hopefully some of what's happening in Colorado translates to your communities. Because this is a local effort in Colorado, again, city council has to do this, and local law enforcement, for the most part, is leading the charge on this. We are fortunate to have a strong ecosystem of grassroots advocates across the state. And so my team has been supporting those advocates to be able to advocate. And what we've encouraged them to do is you have to stay informed on the issue, understand the research, automated enforcement, understand how it can strengthen existing traffic safety plans that communities have, understand the locations of where this technology can make an impact, and of course, understand the law. And then building relationships, as is the case with many things in advocacy, is highly important. So we're helping local advocates connect with their local officials to have conversations about automated enforcement. And then finally, building demand. And this is where this driver behavior study has helped us. It is, if I wasn't clear on this, for us, it's been an advocacy tool. So we have been using it not just to advocate for automated enforcement, but for other safety interventions. I think it can also be a research tool to help communities better understand what's happening on their street. We, for the most part, have been using it as an advocacy tool to build demand for automated traffic enforcement. So there's a variety of strategies that advocates can do to build public support. I will say in Colorado overall, there is strong support, and that support is growing in part because I think people are just very frustrated with what they're seeing on the roads. More people are aware of crashes and fatalities and injuries and want something done. The bill's passed with bipartisan support, not unanimous support, but bipartisan support. And so the demand is there.
Thanks so much, Pete and Dhruv. And Dhruv, welcome you to come back onto video. So we have so many questions in both the chat and the Q&A. There's clearly a lot of enthusiasm for this. And I'll even say, as a mom of 3 kids who wants my kids to be able to walk independently to school, we have to trust that drivers are not considering stop signs as stoptional, which is how they are treated in the city of Philadelphia and where I live. We really, as the Safe Routes Partnership, we believe in children's independent, safe mobility, and are really excited to see this tool be able to support that. So I'm going to go through some of these questions. And Dhruv, I'm going to ask you one that I know you answered, but you answered in text, but just for the benefit, because I saw this in the chat too. Can you talk a little bit about what qualifies as a traffic infraction? Is it the amount of time stopped at a stop sign, a downward glance for a single frame, or multiple? You're on mute.
Thank you. So we followed existing statute to determine our definitions. I think there were a couple of questions that were hinting around this, which is, our technology can be fairly flexible. If there's a police department that says we only want to give out infractions on people who are driving through the stop sign at 4 miles per hour, or someone's using their phone for 15 seconds, our technology can be flexible to adapt to the needs of the jurisdiction. But in general, for the traffic study, we focus on, what is the letter of the law, which means you come to a full and complete stop at the line. It means you don't enter a crosswalk as a vehicle if there's a pedestrian in the crosswalk. It means you don't have your phone in your hand as you're driving. And those were what we used for the specific study. And so, Pete had called this out, there's some behaviors that are worse than others. And, we have the ability to go deeper. But we wanted to start with a study that was a little bit more high level, following the letter of the law to start with.
Thanks so much for that. So one of the things we often hear from our Safe Routes to School field is why their community is exceptional due to topography or geography or climate. And so I want to ask a question in here from somebody in Alaska. Can you please address the use of the Obvio tools in extreme cold weather and snow accumulation on the solar panels?
Totally. So our first deployment base was in Maryland. So we certainly did hit extreme weather. Maybe not Alaska extreme, but it certainly felt extreme for us Californians. And we were able to, solar has come a long way. Our power efficiency has been, continual innovation that we've been working on. And so, there were a couple of days where we had our maintenance team quickly swap out the batteries, but for the most part, we survived the winter without any problems. And so, part of it is because solar has gotten a lot better. Part of it is because our efficiency is very low. So we have a battery in that unit as well. So as the solar is there, it accumulates in the battery. And then so for the days where you don't have solar, at least you have a few days to sort of keep the whole program running. In places where you don't have as much sun for longer periods of time, it would require either a battery or a generator or access to power, which is something that we can work with folks on. But certainly it's a little bit more involved than places where we can support solar.
Great, thanks. A question for Pete. Thanks so much. There's a lot of enthusiasm for this study and what you were able to learn. Great to hear that this is influencing school zone legislation. And somebody was curious if your study specifically assessed school zones relative to other intersections.
We did, Dhruv, correct me if I'm wrong, we did go into some school zones. I don't recall the data from the zones off the top of my head. Can you elaborate on that at all? If not, maybe we can get back to folks with that question that's specific to school zones.
Yeah, absolutely. So we focused on some areas near schools, but it was broader than just school zones because what we were trying to focus on was where are generally all the crashes and high risk areas happening across the state of Colorado. And so we can go back and look at if we did a cut of school zones specifically, but for the case of Colorado, I believe it was broader.
Thanks. Another question about the Colorado study. Somebody's asking about what percentage of drivers were non-compliant. It seems like around 15%, but maybe some drivers, this person's asking, are some drivers guilty of multiple violations at a time?
We certainly see that. There's people who skip a stop sign and speed through both. They're going 10 miles per hour over, which they shouldn't be going through. Sometimes we see people on their cell phones while they blow through a crosswalk. So certainly our systems have detected these kinds of things. Now, in terms of actual citations and authorizations, again, most places, if you're at a place where it's a stop sign, typically it's just a stop sign violation that you see. And a lot of places don't have the legislative authority yet to be able to do tickets on so many different behaviors.
Thanks. I'm going to group a number of questions together in here that are how do you handle or respond to concerns about privacy, particularly of kids in school zones or kids? There's the question about how is this person's commenting on a lot of blowback for other surveillance technology and how is this different? And then somebody's asking a very specific question about whether people are automatically blurred as part of the capture.
Sure. So, we've spent a lot of time thinking about privacy and we're building cameras, so it's an issue that we care about quite a bit. On one hand, there are a lot of camera systems in the world that are quite invasive. I think one of the questions was referring to flock safety, where for every vehicle that drives by, those cameras are tracking the license plate and putting that in a server, whether it's a violator or not. And there's been a lot of pushback for that, especially recently. And generally for a lot of police departments, they are using different kinds of live stream cameras, surveillance cameras. It's very common, and I think at this point, almost every school will likely have a surveillance camera system. Again, it's for safety, and we've seen the kinds of ways that these things come in handy, especially in more dangerous situations. Now, we've built our technology in a way that's attempting to find the right balance here. So again, for us, it's not that the video is being uploaded anywhere. All of the processing and all the analysis is happening on the device itself. And so typically, any car, pedestrian that's going through, that video is not going anywhere. Now, in the case that we do see a violation, only then is that video uploaded. We do have that blurring on the edge technology. And I think someone mentioned, that there could be errors there. And that's absolutely right. We aim to put these cameras in the right of way. So these are sort of like public places where, other kinds of municipal cameras and security systems would be. This is a tool that has to be approved by the municipality and the government, and all the data is owned by the municipality and government as well. So, I think what we're trying to do is limit the actual upload to the violations themselves, blur everything that we possibly can on the device, and then if not, it gets sent to law enforcement for them to approve and send a violation out. And that's where they could flag that something wasn't quite blurred. But at the end of the day, all the data does belong to the municipality for analysis. And so, it's a very limited use case. We're focused on school zones. And we think that's sort of how the future of these systems should work. It shouldn't be that all of the footage and all of the license plates and everything is just going to a server somewhere.
Yeah, thanks so much for that thoughtful approach.
Hey, Marissa,
Yes,
just real quick,
sure.
just to build on what you said, I'll be brief. I think your audience would benefit from this. The only similarity between like Obvio's technology and Flock is there is a camera, but how the camera is used and the back end is totally different. And the legal framework, at least in Colorado, is very different. And so for those who are just going down this path, put into statute your protections. And then I find it comes up in conversations all the time. And because there's quite a bit of pushback in Colorado, particularly in the Front Range with flat cameras or Flock and Denver especially, once you sit down and talk with a government official about it and how it's used in the legal framework, it hasn't been an issue at all.
Thanks. So we have a lot of questions. I'm curious about your strategy for expanding to more states. People asking about what can they do to bring it to their states, and then also curious about if you have what is the state of play on enabling legislation? Is there somewhere that's doing it best that interested parties could model their legislation off of?
Yeah, so in terms of data and legislation, so we have been sort of in chat conversations with legislators in a few different states, Virginia, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Delaware. These are places where they have a pedestrian safety problem. They've had some experience with speed and red light cameras, but are looking for more modernization, these other behaviors. And when we hear that these legislators are interested, we do try to run traffic studies. We have one going on with Bicycle Pittsburgh going right now, and we've done some in Maryland quite a bit as well. And so those are the sort of like the states that we're working with most closely right now. But again, I think this technology is useful all across the country, and so if folks are interested, definitely would encourage them to get in touch with me. My email is Dhruv@obvio.ai. And I'm happy to point you in the right direction, let you know how you can get involved in the movement in different ways.
Thanks, Dhruv. And it strikes me that there are a lot of questions about that. Maybe we can host a follow-up on that with this audience. So we have time for one more question. This is another one that is asked multiple times in the chat. People are curious about the cost for this technology and if there are any grants that can help pay for it.
So in terms of the way the programs are set up, when they have the automated enforcement program live, we actually try to make it completely cost neutral. So that means we front the cost of installing, and as the citation revenue comes in, we use that to pay for the program, and then the rest goes to the municipality. And so our goal is to make it so that municipalities never have to apply for a grant, never have to worry about their budget. And so we sort of bake that into our contracts. I think on the non-ticketing side, we have versions of our technology that can be used for free traffic studies. And there's types of our technology where people can use it for warning letters or data collection. And for those, we haven't entered into any agreements yet, and so we haven't, really created any sort of pricing structure. But it's something that we're open to discussing.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. This is, we have still 24 unanswered questions. So we are capturing those as our team, and we'll work to get those answers out to you either through a blog post or a subsequent webinar. There's clearly a lot of interest in this. So I want to take a moment to thank Pete and Dhruv for participating in the webinar today. And thanks to all of you for your engagement and interest in this topic. And the other question that we got a lot of is this being recorded? Will it be shared? The answer is yes. We'll post it on our website and send it out to all registrants. Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.